Get Rich Education is brought to you by Audible. More than 150,000 audiobooks to choose from for your mobile device.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Hey, welcome to Get Rich Education, Show 20. I'm Keith Weinhold, and I'm grateful that you're here. I'm here to help you get on the path to living your dreams, unlike most people who instead choose to put their head down and keep living their fears. So congratulations for being here. You know, you've got to do the right thing first. Only then do you concern yourself with doing things right once you've found that right thing. If you're here, you're doing one of the right things. You're part of the group that doesn't just want to survive, you want to thrive. Learning how to invest is learning how to do more with less. That way you can live a life truly worth living. Don't get so caught up in making a living that you forget to live a life. That's not a life well lived. You are now surrounding yourself with the thoughts that are going to make you the best version of what you can be. Grow your wealth, and more importantly, change who you become and how you create value for others along the way. If you're here, you know that your best and highest use is not having every one of your friends think that you need to follow Khloe Kardashian on Twitter to know what's going on, okay? Hey, I sincerely want to thank all of the listeners that got a hold of me when I left my contact information in earlier episodes. I did reply to all of those personally. No one wrote any of those replies for me. I appreciate it because when I know more of what you want, I can help you more. There was quite the preponderance of inquiries from the greater New York City, northeastern New Jersey metro, more than anywhere else. And I've been informed that the Empire State is the third most popular GRE listener state, and you were number one for reaching out and giving feedback. Thank you. Hey, my wife and I have really enjoyed our time in New York City, by the way. We were most recently there about 2 or 3 years ago to do Rockefeller Center at Christmas time and some other less touristy stuff. I'm also a 2006 New York City Marathon finisher. Viva la NYC, okay? Hey, some of my replies to those New York City inquiries included the fact that that area of the country generally has rent-to-value ratios that don't make sense for the residential real estate investor. There are also tenant-landlord laws in New York City that favor the tenant, not you, the investor, and there is often rent control, which all define today. Well, the good news is that you don't have to live where you invest as long as you connect with the right team in the right market outside your home market. I help you do this. In fact, I even know a lot of successful real estate investors that choose to rent the home that they live in because it can make more financial sense to rent than own along many U.S. coastal areas where they live. But yet at the same time they're paying rent, they also own rental property, so they're collecting rent in areas outside their home coastal area markets where those numbers do make sense. Those are typically markets in the Midwest and South like Atlanta, Memphis, Birmingham, Alabama, Kansas City, Missouri, Indianapolis, and some of the Texas metros, just to name a few. And those are some of the investor markets that I visit when I want to go find property with passive cash flow. I brought one of those providers onto the show in episode 9 when Memphis, Tennessee's Terry Kerr appeared here for his website and his company at midsouthhomebuyers.com. On an upcoming episode, I also have an excellent Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas property manager and director of real estate investments there appearing here on the show for you. This Dallas property manager, he's a person I know. I've been with him in his office in Arlington, Texas, and I'll do a sort of mock interview with him for you where I play the part of an out-of-area investor interviewing him as the prospective property manager. So you get to see how I screen out-of-area property managers, and you kind of get to be a fly on the wall listening in. That's going to be a cool show. So, well, hey, to get on with today's topic, we're really here on Earth for a very short period of time. And you've got to keep that in mind when you decide how to spend your time. Yes, invest your time. See, like I've said before, you're already an investor. You already have investing experience, and I may not have even met you yet. You're investing your time right now. The American middle class is disappearing, and it's happening in other countries too. So unfortunately, when a member of society leaves the middle class, they usually fall down toward a lower class rather than be pulled up. Well, who's going to pull you up? The truth is that no one else is. You pull yourself up during your very short period of time that you're here on this earth. And the best way to do that is get around the right people. And a great way to do that is through networking, especially at places like national seminars, but local real estate investors association meetings work just as well too. You don't meet people and build lasting friendships with them all through the internet. And remembering the Jim Rohn quote, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, okay? Well, how do you pull yourself up the fastest, most efficient way then? Well, when you get around the right people, it's the way that you present yourself so that you can make those relationships germinate and sprout. Before anyone hears you talk, they see how you act and how you dress first. Dressing well matters. You know, people aren't supposed to use prejudice and stereotype, but everyone does it. When someone doesn't know you, they often harbor preconceived opinions about you that aren't based on reason or actual experience. Do you do it too? I mean, if there are 2 attendees at your local real estate investor meeting, and one is wearing a suit and tie and the other is wearing a striped t-shirt and a Monster energy drink hat, I mean, who would you rather do a deal with? So you shouldn't stereotype, but many do. Now, if you dress well, it helps you in 2 ways. Besides just projecting a professional image to the world that shows that you're serious, studies also show that you act differently when you dress differently. And hey, anyone that makes fun of you for being overdressed probably isn't the type of person that you want to do business with anyway. So that makes this a natural filter for you too. They're not the kind of people that are going to help you pull yourself up. Okay, so other than dress, even more important is the vocabulary that you use. It's kind of the nature of the jargon itself. Some of these vocab words are so second nature to industry insiders that they hardly notice when they use them, and they can fly right over your head and make it harder for you to pull yourself up. So with dressing better and with understanding your investor vocabulary, that might seem like a leap to you at first. You want to be yourself. You want to be authentic for sure. You don't want to act like someone that you aren't. You don't want to start doing things where a friend that really knows you is like, that's not her or that's not him. So you want to be yourself, but you basically want to project the best version of yourself. Think of it this way. Be who you are becoming. Just gradually start being who you want to become. Be who you are becoming. Well, for next week's show, though I invest in real estate nationally and internationally, I'm going to tell you why my wife and I live 9+ months of the year in Anchorage, Alaska, and what it's like to invest in real estate and apartment buildings in Anchorage. I think you're going to be totally surprised at what I have to share there. Hey, let's jump into this. Vocab Rehab. I did this in episode 10, and I'm doing Vocab Rehab again here with some other common investor terms in episode 20. Not just what these terms mean, but how it might be used in a sentence, and most importantly, why it matters to you. Keep in mind that any one of these terms could be its own show if I explained it all out, and I'm often talking in generalizations. If I tried to explain all the caveats and little exceptions to rules, we really just couldn't get very far. The first vocab term is accredited investor. This term has been mentioned on the show a few times, but it's never been well explained out. In order to qualify as an accredited investor, you must accomplish at least one of these two things. Number one is earn an individual income of more than $200,000 per year, or a joint income with your spouse of $300K, and you need to do that in each of the last 2 years and expect to reasonably maintain the same level of income for the current year. Okay, that's the first way you can qualify as an accredited investor. Or the second way is have a net worth exceeding $1 million, either individually or jointly with your spouse, and that does not include equity in your home. Okay, so the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, they have a mission to protect investors. They deem that one is financially sophisticated enough if they meet the accredited investor status. I don't really know if that's the best check on that, but that's what they deem as suitable. So fortunately, with the Dodd-Frank Act, the SEC apparently knows that equity in your home is not a smart investment. If you think that it is, listen to Get Rich Education episode 6 and then see if you still think equity is a good investment, okay? Now, used in a sentence, you might say, the investment only accepts accredited investors. If you're not accredited and you want to invest in your own income property, here's one big takeaway for you then. So what if you're not accredited? So what? Mortgage lenders aren't the ones looking to see if you're accredited. Those investments that one needs to be accredited for are often syndications and private equity placements, vehicles where many investors' funds are pooled together, and there's nothing wrong if you want to do that. But most of the best deals with the highest rates of return are ones where you don't need accreditation. That's when you go control your own rental real estate with your own loan, serviced by tenant rent payments, that surplus of which provides cash flow to you. That's real income and has a real impact on your life. Next, we're going to talk about two terms, a real estate appraisal versus a real estate assessment. They're different and they matter to you. They're definitely not two words for the same thing. Okay, so the first term, appraisal, of these two is an estimation on what the market value of the property is. An appraisal is basically what it's worth. And it's really just a professional opinion. Now, appraisers typically do need to be certified or licensed. Appraisals set the valuation for mortgage loans and also for settling things like estates and divorces, but we're going to focus on the mortgage part. So why does this matter? Why should you care? Well, if you're approved for a mortgage as a borrower, then before the property sells to you, the appraised value of the home must be greater than or equal to the agreed upon sale price. Okay, so let's say you agree to pay $200,000 for a rental property, but the appraisal only comes in at $190K. Well, the bank has an interest in the appraisal because they're checking the value of their collateral. To keep things really simple and general, in short, the bank doesn't want to give out a loan for a property for more than that property's worth. Because if the buyer cannot make their payments to the bank down the road, then the bank wants to be sure that they're going to be taking over a property that has a value substantial enough so that the bank doesn't get stiffed. Well, your loan approval might fail if the home appraises at a price less than what the buyer and seller agreed upon, the bank saying that the quality of their collateral is not good enough. So if that happens, the buyer might want to renegotiate with the sellers to determine a lower price. Appraisals are often typically done during cash-out refinances too, which is when you want to turn property equity into cash. The higher the appraised amount, the more equity you can access. There are 3 different approaches to appraised value, but we're not going to get into that today. Appraisal differs from our next term, which is assessment. Okay, assessments are done by government tax assessors to determine property tax payments. They're usually done every 2 or 3 years by your municipality or county, and they become part of the public record. Anyone can look up another property's assessed value. An assessment does not equate to how much your home is worth. Often it seems that the assessed value comes in somewhat lower than that, lower than the appraised value. So that's an assessment. So in short, an appraisal is what a property is worth. An assessment is for government taxes. Maybe a way to remember it is assessment is for the government, like taxes. I don't know, you might come up with a better mental trigger than that for distinguishing the two, but I really want you to remember the difference between appraisal and assessment. The next term is Capex, C-A-P-E-X. That's sort of a hybrid abbreviated term for capital expenditure. A capital expenditure is a major irregular expense on an income property, like replacing a roof on a rental single-family home, or replacing a furnace in a building, or replacing some windows in a duplex, for example. You should care about Capex items because they're often taxed differently than regular, smaller, little recurring rental property expenses like an electric bill or lawn care. Now, you cannot write off Capex items completely in that same year like you can with smaller recurring repairs. An example of how Capex is used in the sentence might be, does your property's annual profit and loss projection include Capex items? Now, that's an intelligent question to ask. Okay, the next term is capital gains tax. You've probably heard the term. A capital gains tax that's paid when you sell something and make money. I mean, that's about as simple as I can make it. Capital gains tax is basically when you sell something and make money from that sale. Now, that differs from an income tax, like what you have to pay at your workaday job, or from monthly income from real estate rent paid and other types of tax. So if you buy a home for $200,000, you sell it years later for $500,000, you have a $300,000 profit or capital gain. Now, in a primary residence, you don't have to pay any capital gains tax on the first $250,000 of gain if you're single, or $500,000 of gain if you're married. So in that example of the $300,000 gain, the first $250K would be exempt from capital gains tax if you're single, and it's all tax-free gain if you're married filing jointly. Now, there are some smaller adjustments to make to that depending on your basis, but we won't get bogged down in that. Notice that in conversations with people, the term capital gains tax gets abused. People often leave off the word tax and they just say capital gains. For example, you'll hear people say, I don't want to have to pay capital gains. Well, they should say capital gains tax. No one pays capital gains. A capital gain is your profit from the sale of something. Capital gains tax is the tax that you pay on that capital gain, or the portion that's a profit from the sale. Now, I described a primary residence example above. That's defined as where you lived in the home 2 or more of the previous 5 years. That's how it's defined for taxation. As soon as you have a rental property, you have to pay tax on any capital gain anytime you sell the rental and make money. There isn't any tax-free capital gain portion like there is with a primary residence. Now, there is a way to get around paying capital gains tax on your rental property with a 1031 exchange, which I'll explain next. Used in a sentence, you might say, I plan to defer my capital gains tax, meaning you can legally put it off and pay it later, okay? All right, the next term is 1031 exchange. 1031 is just the numbered section of the IRS tax code that lays out this rule. It's also called a tax-deferred exchange. This refers to rental property. A 1031 exchange is a way for you to legally circumvent having to pay any capital gains tax on profit from the sale of your rental property, no matter how high that profit is. Yes! I mean, do educated real estate investors win every which way they turn, or what? No wonder they say that landlords grow rich in their sleep. Yeah! Now, you do have to perform an exchange within certain timelines. From the time you sell one property, you have 45 days to identify the replacement property that you're going to move your gain into, and then buy that replacement property within 180 days. I brought up this term 1031 exchange with Tom Wheelwright on the last episode. I've done 1031 exchanges with 4 buildings during my real estate investing career, and I will do a lot more. There's also no limit to the amount of times that you can do this in your life. Can you believe this? I mean, like I've said before, the US government will see that you're generously rewarded if you provide society with housing, food, or energy, and other world countries outside the US often do too. Gosh, I get so fired up telling others this. I want you to experience what I've experienced. If that's not enough, after a lifetime of 1031 exchanges to continually move up to bigger and more profitable rental buildings, free of any capital gains tax during your life, well, upon your death, your heirs don't even incur any accumulated tax bill from you with this. So a tax bill never catches up with you or your heirs. I mean, real estate is truly a legacy type of investment. Hey, we're going to come back with a little bit more right after this. For Get Rich Education listeners, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. You can download a free audiobook written by one of the guests I've had on the show, like Garrett Sutton, Tom Wheelwright, Tom Hopkins, or Judy Robinette. Or pick another audiobook for free. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/getricheducation. Again, that's audibletrial.com/getricheducation for your free audiobook.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Tom Wheelwright. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Hey, welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're doing Vocab Rehab today. The next term is debt service. Debt service is just sort of a fancy way of saying a mortgage payment service. Debt service refers to a monthly principal and interest payment for a property. One way it might be used in a sentence is if a new construction project is not yet completed, but yet the owner of the property under construction still has to make monthly mortgage payments and they don't have any rent income yet, then one might say, the project isn't completed, the owner has no income, and he's servicing a lot of debt. The next term, mortgage, yes, we're defining a term that's simple right here. Defined, it's a legal agreement in which a person borrows money to buy property and then pays back the money over a period of years. The first known use of the term mortgage was in the 1400s, so it's actually an old French term. Mort, M-O-R-T, means death. So therefore, a mortgage is like the slow death of a loan as it's paid down over time. Why does this term matter to you? All right, it's counterintuitive, but you often want a mortgage in place to magnify your rate of return on investment real estate because that way you have less of your own money invested and that doesn't affect the potential appreciation on the property at all. When you outsource your mortgage, also known as debt service, to your tenants, well, then a mortgage can become your friend. If you're unsure about this, listen to episode 6, which has opened up a whole new thought paradigm for some listeners. All right. Used in a sentence, one might say, to use leverage, you need a mortgage. The next term is rate hike. This is a macroeconomic term. And when a rate hike occurs, it affects real estate investors even more than everyday consumers. When you hear about a rate hike, it will be announced by U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen. By the way, every time I see a Janet Yellen press conference, I can't even think of what she's saying until the word grandma shoots through my mind. Yellen looks like a grandma and even a lot like my real grandmother in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, in her kitchen, listening to the Phillies spring training game on the radio. All right, so once I get past the grandma thing, a rate hike means an increase in interest rates, okay? Why increase interest rates or hike rates? Okay, why move that around or change that? Well, the federal funds rate, which a lot of other interest rates result from, that's what Yellen manipulates. She controls the U.S. economy in part by moving this federal funds rate, hiking rates up, or moving them down. Those Yellen decisions directly impact the prime rate and home equity lines of credit. If she moves the federal funds rate up 0.5%, then home equity lines of credit rise 0.5%. However, with different loan types like your 30-year and 15-year longer-term mortgage rates, like you typically have tied to an investment property, those don't rise directly with the federal funds rate hikes, but there is a more loose correlation. If she hikes rates, your mortgage loans are likely to go up fairly soon. Now, of course, if you bought an income property with a 5% fixed interest rate loan a few years ago, then it doesn't matter what happens to rates right there because your rate is locked in for all 30 years of that loan. But if rates go up to 5.5%, any new property you buy will be subject to higher interest rates, and it will cut your monthly cash flow from the tenant rent income because you'll have a higher monthly mortgage payment. The federal funds rate has been crazy low, like as low as it can be, essentially zero, since December 2008, and that's because the economy has been so troubled. Well, when we get a stronger economy, like many think we do, although there are some detractors about how real this recovery is, when we get that stronger economy, we typically get higher mortgage rates. So many are now asking the question of Yellen's Federal Reserve, when are you going to hike rates? Hiking or increasing rates keeps an economy from overheating, and it helps keep inflation in check. So to understand this, let me just ask you in an extreme example. If you were looking at buying an apartment building and you were comparing its projected performance with a 5% interest rate loan that you have to pay interest on versus, say, a 12% interest rate loan that you have to pay interest on, the 12% interest rate loan might make it so that you could no longer buy it profitably and you would walk away from that deal. It's the same way if you wanted to borrow money for a business and you had to pay double the interest rate next year that you do this year. Well, then you might not start that business if you had to pay such high interest rates in a rate hike environment. So rate hikes cool off the economy. Many speculate that a Yellen rate hike announcement will make the stock market go down because higher rates put downward pressure on business borrowing and expansion. The next term is rent control. Rent control is a term I don't want to have anything to do with it. That's a government limit placed on how much you can charge a tenant for rent. So I avoid buying in rent control areas just like you typically should. You invest in real estate to provide housing and make a profit in exchange for it. Well, if you can only charge so much for rent no matter what, then how much incentive do you have to improve a property and make life better for a tenant? I mean, not much. New York City and coastal California famously have some rent control areas. Some don't realize that Washington, D.C. does too. Rent control areas typically correspond with those same jurisdictions that have other tenant-friendly laws too, not investor-friendly laws. There's a list of rent control cities at Landlord.com. The last term here is ROTI, Return on Time Invested. It's a rarely used term, and it's hard to quantify return on time invested. But when you look at the projected financial performance of a rental building or a farmland investment or oil and gas investing, you'll never see ROTI stated. You'll see return on investment, return on equity, internal rate of return, cap rate, etc., but return on time invested can be your most important consideration. Look, do you have time to appreciate some of the better things in life and think expansionary thoughts? ROTI is important. Your schedule might always be filled, but is your life fulfilled? Life is to be enjoyed, not endured. It's incredible to see how many people seem to have forgotten this. Real estate isn't ultimately what we want. It's not the thing. Real estate returns are what fuel the thing in your life, whatever that is. So used in a sentence, you might say, I used to manage my own properties until I asked myself, what's my return on time invested? Now, saying something like that can make you smart beyond your years. So, hey, that's it for our vocab rehab terms. Look, again, this episode describes a lot of these terms in a general sense. Sometimes there are caveats and it depends factors. But if nothing else, this will give you general knowledge on how to use some of these terms. I want to keep building you up and making you better. This enhances your vocabulary. Vocabulary are your words. Words become your actions, actions become your patterns, and your patterns make you. You can look up more details on these words if you want through links in the show notes. Hopefully this gives you a start and maybe some motivation to find out more, yet it's enough on its own if you don't. Investopedia.com is a good information source for definitions. Surprisingly, so is the SEC's site, Investor.gov. And don't be afraid of Investor.gov, though it's a federal government site. Its glossary is pretty user-friendly for looking up vocab terms. Get Rich Education is here to help you pull yourself up every week. And to best help pull yourself up so that you never miss a free show, go into your favorite podcast listening app and touch the free subscribe button. Until next week, though you might make enough money follow you so that you can quit your day job, don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to the Get Rich Education podcast, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.